and thanks for tuning in to another episode of Real Paint Talks of PSC. So on today's episode, what I want to chat about is the estimating part of painting. So I get a lot of people in my DM box who DM me and ask me, can you help me quote this? How do I quote this? How do you estimate? What are the ways you know that you can go about it? Feeling confident that you're not possibly going to lose in the long run, as quoting can be a real difficult thing to hit on the head, especially if you're trying to win work and when you're competing with other people. So how I first kind of go about it, guys, is I always try and tell people, know your worth. You got to know your worth and be real about it. I mean, don't lie to yourself, right? Know your worth, find your strengths, find your weaknesses, and know at that point in your career, in your painting career, know where you stand. And that will help you really be able to have a greater vision of how you can price jobs out in the future. Because what happens is a lot of times people, they message me and they say, hey man, like, what would you charge for this? Or I charged this. Do you think that's a good price? And that's really hard to do online, especially if I don't see it. But I get people who will send me plans, or they'll send me photos and be like, hey, I quoted this, or hey, can you help me quote this? And that takes a little bit of time. So a lot of people, I just tell them this is what I tell them. Go about it this way. What do you want to work for? What are your overheads? What do you have to pay? So the reason I go about it this way, guys, is I try and keep it really simple, because there are definitely other professionals out there, which I am definitely going to bring on the show, and we can talk more on that side of the field. I'm just going to give you my view and my thought on it from the painter side right now. And we'll bring some people in and we'll cross-reference this and we'll talk about it a little deeper. But what I sort of tell people is find your worth. Know where you stand, know where your skill is. And then you'll be able to know what you want to make, what kind of money you want to make. And that really is going to come down to what you can provide, how fast you can provide it, and a bunch of different variables. So I think what a lot of people get worried about is losing. Did I quote enough? Is that enough? Oh man, did I take that into, consideration? Because there's a lot of things that can come into play when you're doing a job that you might not have foreseen. And that can really play a big part into how much money you're going to make in the end. And people are scared of that. So sort of what I tell people is keep it really basic. Really, really basic. And essentially, you got to figure out what you want to make for yourself, what your company wants to make. Think about it like that. I know there's all these minor details, not minor, but other details that are like, okay, well, your company's going to make this and you're going to pay tax on that, you're going to do this and this, but just keep it simple for the start. Essentially, you want to go into a job and you're going to have three things. This is usually how I explain it to people, okay? You're going to have your estimate, then you're going to have your price, then you're going to have your cost. And this is just a simple way of thinking about it to gain some clarity on really how that works first. And then you can sort of see where you can go pulling strings on charging more for this, charging less for that. And then that'll be dependent back to that skill level, right? So essentially I just say to somebody, you're giving somebody an estimate. That's what you're estimating it should be done for. This is all in my opinion, guys. Remember, this is the way I view it. I learned this from a guy a long time ago, and I seen a lot of value in it, and that's what's really important. It's value. You got to understand that, and I think this might clear it up for some people. So you have your estimate. Then you have your price. And those aren't the same, folks. That's the difference a little bit right there. So you're estimating what the job's going to be done at. You've put in all your consideration, your labor, your supplies, yourself, your employees, your company costs, whatever. That should all be entailed sort of in your price, in your estimate, okay? The price is what's agreed upon, because you don't always get your estimate. The price is what's agreed upon, okay? And then I tell people, then there's your cost. And that's the one you want to pay the most attention to. That's the one where you really want to keep your notes from every job you've done before. Start tracking everything. Write it down. If you don't want to use apps, if you're not computer savvy, if you're old school, write it down. I still write a lot of my estimates down. And if I have a ton of them, that's still how I do it, because when I write it down, I feel like I remember it better. Even if I'm typing into my phone, I don't think I remember it as well. I just think that must be something in our brains that's different. Me physically writing it down on paper, I remember it. So I write a lot of my estimates down. Okay. So then when you have your estimate, then you get your price, then you get your cost. Then when you cross-reference all those, you're going to see, okay, my last job, I documented it took me this much in materials, took me this much in labor, here's my cost. So then you reference that to your actual price. It's like, okay, so the job, I got the price and we agreed upon was $5,000. Okay, it's going to cost me $4,200 to do this job. So you have $800 left over. You know, let's not get fancy with the big words and stuff. You have $800 left over, right? So then that technically should be the profit. You know, not this margin, not this, that's kind of your profit. If you take into consideration what it costs you, all that money should go to those places and you should be left over with $800. If the job was priced and agreed at $5,000, you did the cost and did the job for $4,200, you made $800. What you want to do with that money afterwards is up to you. But the way that helps you with your estimating is this. If it took you this amount of time, say you're a one-man crew, if it took you this amount of time, right? And you've done it in this amount of time, and you knew, okay, if I do it in this amount of time at this price, I'm going to make this much money. But then say you get into a job and you're like, you know what? I can really do this job well. I could probably either charge them more because I'm very valuable at what I do, or give them a deal because you know you're really good at what you do. And you can go in and say, you know what, I can do it for this much. Because what a lot of guys, when they message me online, and gals too, guys and gals, when I get messages online, they're always wondering, oh, did I charge enough? Am I there? Have I charged enough? Well, you're only really losing on yourself, which a lot of people are like, well, yeah, I'm losing. Okay, but I'm just talking more about if you pay labor, you pay your supplies, you pay for all that stuff, all your overheads, okay? It's coming down to you and what you want to make. So if it's like, no, man, I'm worth about $60 an hour. Well, that $60 an hour is going to go to you. So then if you only have, say, $20 worth an hour in wages accumulated, then you're only going to get a guy for $20 an hour. You kind of see what I mean? So you got to like do all of that tracking to see where you sit. So there's a lot of times where I can't give guys that information. Like, how much do you charge? Or what do you charge? It's like, well, I charge what I feel like I want to make on that job. And then if you see like, okay, you know, this is a pretty simple job, I don't need to charge that person that much. Some people think it's overcharging. It all really depends. It comes down to, well, am I overcharging this person, or are there a lot of variables in this job that I can foresee being a problem that will make me less money in the long run? That could be one variable, one situation, one scenario. So the problem with it is, guys, is knowing where you stand. Like I said in the beginning, knowing your skill level. If I go into a repaint and I look at it and I'm like, okay, I think it would take my guys maybe 2 days to do this, but I could probably come in here and I could do this in a day and a half or a day. Well, really, it's like, so that's kind of what helps my company stay afloat a little bit. If I can talk about it on a personal level, is that I don't have all these crazy overheads. I don't have 10, 20 guys. And especially if you're trying to teach these guys, they're consuming that wage. So when I was really at the heart of my career, which I think I am still right now, I shouldn't say at the heart of my career, when I had 3 mansions on the go, about 10 guys, and these are contractors, did I really come out making more money? If I would have concentrated on one mansion, just me and say 2 other guys hitting it really hard, I might have almost made the same amount of money. And whether or not I did or not, the analytics and all those details is definitely for another episode all on itself. But the point is keeping track and knowing, okay, did I make more money this way? Well, you need to know, because then you need to go back to your price and your estimate and be like, am I in the right area? Hey, I'm losing a lot of jobs. Or hey, I'm getting a lot of jobs, but I can't make any money. It can be a tough struggle, right? So with me, the reason I discovered it this way is because coming from the high-end game, coming out of really, really high-end homes for builders. So when it comes down to the end and the closeout and the touch-ups, they go through it with a comb. They look over everything, 100%. So your touch-ups can be major. So you want to try and do a 100% good job through it. It's almost impossible to do a 100% good job from the beginning, right? But you need to know that that's coming, right? So they're picky. They tear it apart. Not tear it apart, but they, there's a certain caliber. So when we came out of that, when the economy kind of went down and it got slower and we had to go to the repaint game, you go to the repaint game, or you go to the kitchen spray repaint game, or you go to smaller builders who say custom, quote unquote, but then some of the details you see are not that true custom. So what we had to do is we really had to look at what we could do for that client. There's been a couple, discussions on Instagram, especially, about, like, where do you kind of draw a line and what's good and what's bad, and what you should take for a job and what you should let go. There's a really, really good quote I like to say is, the best batters don't swing at every pitch. So some jobs might not be the best suited, but here's the thing. Do you really want to let that job go and lose it if you're not that busy over some pride? Me on the high-end game, I'm a little bit like, yes. But the more jobs we started to lose because we were either too expensive or, too fancy, I would lose a ton of jobs when people would see my portfolio. They'd be like, oh, no, dude, I don't need that. I just need like my kitchen repaint. It's like, yeah, whoa, yep. I can give you that. So that's when the price packaging came into point for me. But it was more because it's like, instead of being like, whatever, F it, that guy can have it. It's more like, well, man, that guy still hacked that job up. So I might as well have took it for that price and used my skill, like I was saying before, to still get that job done and make maybe a little bit less than I would have made on the last job. Not every job is going to be 150% peachy. It's just not the way it is. You win some, you lose some. But what I try and do with my business is you win some, and then maybe next time you win just a little bit. You never really want to lose. And I've done pretty good, knock on wood, that, I've been blessed enough to be able to work with great people I can trust. So being screwed over or not getting paid or anything like that down the line, it's been really good, knock on wood. But I've also tried really hard to protect myself from that by knowing exactly where my skill level stands. So like I said, if I go into a job, if this is a full repaint or a new custom home or whatever it may be, if Buddy's coming in at, say I'm 10 grand and he's 8 grand, I just really analyze it and say, okay, where can I maybe cut this 2 grand to be able to still compete with this guy, even if this guy is way worse on quality than you, because some people just don't care. I've seen it. It all comes down to numbers. So some people just don't care. If the price is not there, they don't care. It's just like, okay, do it. This guy's going to do it cheaper. And then it's like, oh man, they really screwed that job up. And sometimes people care and sometimes people get away with it. So that's what made me realize, holy crap, that guy, that butcher ass company is still getting all that work. You know what? It's not going and undercutting him. It's being like, if he's going to do it for that, you know what, I'll do for that, but I'm going to give you something better in terms of service and what you're getting when you actually do a job with us. So that becomes a selling point, but that always comes back to knowing where your skills are. So us being a high-end lacquer crew, not a lot of people are doing the lacquer game anymore. We're going into these custom homes and we're spraying a lot of lacquers, which can be tricky, finicky, and we do it well. So that's where I can be like, that's where I don't like to budge on my price, because it's really the grunt of the work. For us, no lie, and this isn't us patting ourselves on the backs or anything, but it's like painting walls and ceilings and doing repaints. That's easy for us. That's like a break for us. Doing exteriors is a break, because when we get into a house full of millwork, there's a ton of spraying, and it becomes finicky and it becomes hard. So that's the kind of stuff I don't bend on, right? But when guys are coming in and they're undercutting a little or they'll do it less, we don't always want to say no to those jobs, guys. We want to try and find a way to do that. We can only be able to do that if you know your skill level. You never want to bite off too much. You don't want to bite off more than you can chew, because if you start doing that, then what's going to happen is then you're going to burn yourself and you're going to make your reputation look bad. So you want to start slow. But when it comes down to that estimating and getting those jobs, like I said, it comes down to those three things. It comes down to that estimate, that price, and then that cost. And that'll be the easiest way for you guys to figure out where you stand and then how you can go about that up and down graph of where you can be when it comes to price. Because that's really what it comes down to, guys, is knowing your skill and knowing where you can come in. So that's usually what I do. So if I go into a repaint and I can see that there's this certain amount, it costs this much, okay, I'm going to do it for this price. If I get a bad intuition about it, because that's another big key thing, guys. Use your brains, use your intuition, use your gut. Sometimes you have to say no. Sometimes you have to walk away from jobs and be like, whew, did me a favor. Or overprice them, so if you get them, you know that there's room, that if anything goes wrong, everybody can still be paid and everyone can still make an okay buck. Sometimes you break even, right? But knowing that cost, like knowing those three things, will help a ton. Because I can't give people prices. Because if I wanted to be a cocky son of a bitch, like some guys probably can be, you know, which I'm not just saying me, I just mean if you're amazing at painting with a brush, laying off brush finish on casings, if that's your thing and you do it better than anybody else, if you want to charge for that, do it. Don't cut yourself short. But what I'm saying is that you'll be able to gauge where you can kind of, I could probably do this one for this or that because it entails this. Okay. You got to know that, guys, because that's everything. So like I say, when guys DM me online, I can't give them the answer. That's usually what I tell them. But I do get a lot of guys that are asking me, and gals, how do I go about this? And that makes them feel a lot better, and they come back to me and they understand it, right? And then you can do, if people are like, well, is it like maybe $3 a square foot, or is it like $10 a linear foot? And it's like, well, really, that again comes down to you, right? For example, if it's, 20 linear feet of built-in and you charge $10 a linear foot, it's $2,000, right? So you do that math, there it is right there. You got your linear footage price. You do it on square footage. Say you get a job for $10,000 and it's 5,000 square foot house and it's $2 a square foot. And if you want to use that to base that on people, and then however do you play it, everyone has different ways of estimating. Some guys have really cool apps and really cool systems implemented into their companies to really help with the estimating and quoting and stuff like that. I don't have that because we're on a little bit of a different scale in just terms of we have 1 to 2 smaller, well, not smaller, but just a smaller clientele that keep us busy with a lot of work, so I don't really need that, like in a couple of projects I'm in right now, I know I'm going to be there for a while because they're big homes. So it just comes down to estimating it, figuring out your costs, but it always, like I said, comes down to going back and to your data that you've saved up. Go back, go over your work, go over your estimates. That's what it takes. It's that extra step, guys. It's being headstrong in that and knowing it. It's a lot of work. It's dedication. At the end of the day, when you want to come home and you want to sit down, you can't. It's being like, okay, let's go over that, or set a date. If it's every 2 weeks you want to look at it, if it's every month you want to look at it, then you look at it like that. Once it's every 2 jobs, you go back and you look at it and you say like, okay, here's where I stood. Here's how I did. Oh, this is how much it cost me here. This is how much it cost me there. Oh, talk to your sales rep. I might be able to shave a couple bucks off if I use this product, which is also almost virtually the same as this product. Maybe if I buy it in bulk like this, I can save money here. All those costs and variables, like I say, I would love to get into detail with someone on the show who's really, really into that, who has great systems. So I'm going to find someone and we're going to go over that in some details because that is really good information too, guys. That's digging in deeper. But for now, on the basic side, if you're ever worried, if you're losing, it comes down to knowing your worth and what you want to make. I can't stress that enough. If you got bills and you're hardcore in debt and you need to make money, which some people are, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to grind and pay off debt, because there's nothing better and nothing feels better than working hard and being able to come back from something. Or if there's good debt too, maybe you're borrowing because you want to grow, right? So it's knowing what you need to make sometimes will help you distinguish these prices. When I'm busy, When I'm the busiest, some people would be like, well, I would charge more because then people want me. It's like, well, no, I don't think that way. Me, myself, when I'm the busiest, that's when I feel I can give out better deals because I have more coming in. I don't want to just grind everyone to the top. What I try and do is I try and pre-book people for the future. I just say, listen, I'll give you a great deal. Just wait because I'm busy right now. So I know that, I'll be okay. But if it comes down to like, oh man, I really need to make $2,000 every 2 weeks or $5,000 a month. Okay, so I got this job. It's $8,000. I can't afford to like put $7,000 of it all into labor and then maybe make $200 after I pay for paints, yada, yada, yada. Whatever it may be, those details is what you have to know. Once you know that, then you'll be able to estimate jobs different. Quick pro tip though, very, very important. Never use a job or a quote that has come through approved and plan that money for the future. Like if you haven't done that job and you haven't collected that money, do not account for that money in the future. Because in my experience, after time goes on, if you don't get paid for that money right away, in my line of work, what I've noticed with the big projects, is it's hard to make the big money quick. Sometimes it prolongs, but if you got a quick little repaint where you can bang it off and say you make like, a quick $2,500, that's a little different. So you got to know these things in terms of how you want to approach it. Because if you approach it, you know what? I make more money as a one-man band. Definitely, you can. But sometimes you can't grow that way. When you go to bigger jobs and you see it's like, but I really need it because I need to pay for this, for that. It's like, no. That's when the details come in. That's when you have to sit down, budget yourself out for your company, for yourself, for your workers, for your materials, for that cost column and figure out where you stand. And then when you get some of that money and you break it all up however you need to, which is another episode we're going to talk more about and dive deeper into. I want to have someone on here, a good friend of mine that I've already had in mind. He doesn't even know it yet, but he's an accountant and sort of a money guy, and we're going to bring him on here, and he's going to help maybe guys that are just starting out really dive into those details of how to, once you've made the money, how to divvy it all up and use it properly and use the right piece of that money properly. Because remember, just because you're like, sweet, yeah, I got approved that job, $6,000, boom, yeah, I'm going to make this much, possibly, yeah, I could make this or that. It's like, don't count on it yet. Count your costs for what you got, like what it's going to cost you. Take that into account first. Know that and pre-plan for the future. So, and then pre-plan the other money for the future. But don't say like, oh, well, I'm going to take this money and use it down the road for this. No. Each job that money should go to that job, right? Don't count your chickens before they hatch. So that's all I'm really saying, guys, is don't get excited. In my experience, the most, if that money needs to be broken down and put aside to certain places, say you leverage most of that with your credit card. So when you get paid, that credit card needs to be in there. Put that money aside. There it goes, right? Because you don't want to screw yourself over, right? You don't want to get back taxed. You don't want to fall behind on whatever it may be. So stay tight on that, guys, and stay very dedicated and headstrong on that, because that really is going to help you in the long run with quoting and estimating. And I know that sounds crazy because I'm not talking really, really into specifics of the painting and like actual systems, but this is the easiest way to think about it because it comes down to pretty simple stuff, right? It's just know your costs, and then you'll be able to, try and, get the best price you can for a job. And if you're trying to stay competitive, then you'll know how you can give deals and where you can make cuts and stuff like that, right? So that stuff all matters, right? So just be real strong and tight with your cash, because leverage, which is going to be another episode down the road. I got lots of great stuff coming, guys, on Real Paint Talks at PSC. No joke, real great stuff coming down the road. But I do want to get on with somebody and talk a little bit about leverage, which I'll talk about right now, just a tad. Because with some of the line of work that I do, sometimes you don't get paid for 30 to 90 days. That can be very difficult, especially if you're trying to grow. Because if you're trying to grow, sometimes you need leverage to grow. You need to be fronting this money out. That is another aspect that you need to take into consideration when you're quoting and estimating. Am I going to have to front this? How long is it going to take? Okay, guys, this job we need to crush this job because, I want to get paid at the end right away. Or we're not going to pay you until you get it done right away, and then we'll pay you at this date, but we won't pay you at this date until you get it done right away. So there's so many different variables. So for me, what I really found helped is as soon as I created a little bit of a bankroll, a savings account, then I kind of went to my bank, showed them that I had a little bit of leverage, and they lent me some money to help grow the company. Because that's really what you want. You want to be able to grow. Be very careful when you borrow. Be very smart about it. Talk to people. Do lots of research and try and talk to the right people around you. But get some leverage because that'll help you grow and that'll help you be able to give out more confident estimates and quotes, knowing that you might be able to give a deal. Because remember, some people make a lot of money in volume. There's nothing really wrong with the splash and dash butchers out there who want to fly through stuff. Everybody has their place. Everybody needs to eat. I don't hate on anybody because I know how it is out there. I've seen all aspects of the paint world except for the industrial side. So I know how it works. So it really is going to come down to, what your worth is. So if guys want to come out and they want to undercut and they want to do this or that and they become your competition, you just got to sit where you want to sit and be smart about it. But so little recap, everybody. Remember those three things. There's your estimate, there's your price, then there's your cost. So when you go into an estimate, doesn't matter what you're doing, square footage, repaint, mass square footage, custom, it doesn't really matter. The basics or the principles are all the same on those basics, right? Give them an estimate. You're going to agree on a price, figure out your costs, track those costs, track all the data from every job that you do, and then you'll be able to cross-reference them and see, okay, this is how much certain things cost me. This is usually how fast we do it. This is where my estimate can be. Then you don't have to worry too much about losing. Know your worth, know where you stand, know your skill level, and then you'll never have to worry, folks. So thank you so much for joining in to another episode of the Real Paint Talks of PSC. Stay tuned for many more to come, folks, and much love. And once again, follow me on YouTube. Please subscribe to the podcast and check me out on Instagram because I got lots of informative videos on there. And thanks so much, everyone, once again. Much love from Top Line.